Okay folks, I'm gonna light my Blaze King Princess here. I've loaded it up with a nice load of wood, and I'm using fat wood. I forgot where I got it, but this stuff works really great, and some cedar kindling here that I also bought. So what I do differently is I turn down the air control down to the second to lowest spot. So the idea here is to let it start up slowly instead of having the air control all the way up wide open, which allows it to start a lot faster, but you get a lot of smoke out the chimney doing it that way. So what I've found is having the air control on a low setting allows it to start up gradually, minimizes the smoke going out the chimney, and it just takes a little longer to heat up, but I think it's easier on my neighbors. So here we go. Light. So I like to use the top-down method. I think that is a little more, creates a little less smoke. Again, it takes a little bit longer to start up this way, but I like the top-down method instead of the traditional method of starting a fire. So. But one thing I realized with the Blaze King is the temperature gauge. Make sure that's adjusted properly. When I first got the stove, the installer didn't adjust the temperature gauge, so I was, not engaging the bypass for a long time. But anyway, this is being recorded in 4K, so hopefully it'll look nice. Should have cleaned the door, but anyway, there we go. So we'll let that go. Wow, it's starting up really fast. So there's the air control, and it's getting to the point where I can engage the bypass. It's been running about 5 minutes now. Alright, time to engage the bypass. So I just engaged the bypass. So that'll activate, force the smoke out the catalyst. So this particular load started up really fast. Usually it's a little bit slower than this. But like I said, with this method, you get a little less smoke. Normally this thing smokes like a steam locomotive if you have it on wide open. But starting it up this way, I feel I can get a good burn going without really causing too much smoke and annoying my neighbors. So you can see there's a little bit of smoke coming out, but it's not coming out like a freight train. Sorry, a steam train. If you're wondering about the music, it's Music Choice Soundscape channel. I like to listen to that in the morning. I like to listen to that pretty much all day. Makes me feel like I'm somewhere in a fancy resort in the American Southwest. So yeah, that's a top-down method. I'm not paying attention to the size of my splits. I have some really big splits in there, but I feel with the fat wood, and it's not just any fat wood, it's a particular brand. I think it's from Plow and Hearth, I want to say. I know the cedar kindling is from Wayfair, and that was the first year I had it. It's been two years that I've had it. The first year it just didn't burn very well, so I made my own kindling. But this year, this season, I've been using it, and it's working fine. But the real star here is the fat wood, so I really like using that. Alright, let's take a look at the smoke coming out of the chimney and see what we're looking at. So there's some smoke, but it's not coming out like a freight train, a steam train. Keep seeing freight. And that'll clear up pretty quickly. But normally you'd get thick white smoke, which if you read the manual they say, oh, that's just water vapor, but I know it annoys people to see that kind of thing coming out, so I try to minimize it. So that's where the air control is. You see the white line, and it's kind of pointing down at, say, 5 o'clock position. Normally Blaze King would have it at 12 o'clock, and that would generate just a lot of smoke out the chimney until the thing warms up. So the thermometer shows I'm well in the active zone, and that's only been running for about 15 minutes or so. I'm starting to feel heat coming out of it. So when I started it was 73 degrees. Now we've already gone up by a degree. And when this thing is running properly, you know, after about 30 minutes, 40 minutes, this room will be close to 80 degrees, if not higher. Sorry, that was out of focus. So we have a nice burn going. Yeah, there's not many folks that use this method and write about it, but I find it's a good compromise. And the other thing that this is good for is reloading. So in 8 hours, when I'm ready to reload, again, I'll make sure the air control is turned down in the 5 o'clock position, and then I'll reload. And this way, the reload ignites pretty quickly, but again, I'm not smoking up the neighborhood if I were to keep the air control on the 12 o'clock position. So this is the one thing I've learned with this stove is, you know, on startup and reload, if you follow the instructions from Blaze King, you're going to get a lot of smoke. And to minimize that, you know, instead of starting wide open, start it in the 5 o'clock position. So this is the Blaze King Princess wood insert. I know some of the other stoves from Blaze King have the air control oriented slightly differently. So the idea is the same, you know, instead of starting wide open, start out pretty much on a low, on a closed position, you know, just slightly open. But as you can see, I mean, it really didn't impact the fire from getting started. And the idea here is that the air control will allow enough air to go in to allow combustion, but at the same time, it won't let it run away. And you know, when you have a runaway sort of situation where you hear the stove huffing and puffing, you know, it's very noticeable if a lot of air is going in there. Let me mute the audio so maybe you can hear what I'm talking about in terms of so there's not the sound of air rushing into the stove, and if I had this on wide open, it would sound like that. So let's take a look at the smoke out of the chimney. We'll be right back. So it's looking pretty good. You know, I'm not seeing a lot of smoke, and this would not bother any neighbor. And that's what I want. I don't want to be smoking up the neighborhood. And that's what essentially I was getting the evil eye from a lot of my neighbors. And I think it was because they saw me as polluting the air. Even though white smoke is really just water vapor, but, you know, it's better to have no smoke. So the air control is now around the not the air control, but the thermometer is well in the active zone around 2 p.m. and it's going to make its way up so that it's now, you know, very at a nice operating temperature. And pretty much with this stove, it operates at the 4 or 5 o'clock position on the thermometer. So we have a nice burn going. It's starting to warm up here. It's already now at 75 degrees. And when the thermometer is outside of, you know, well above the active range, what I do is I start opening up the air control a little bit, you know, turning it more on the open position. And this way I get, you know, get the temperature really, really nice and hot to burn off any creosote or clean up the front glass. And get a nice cozy temperature in the room. But that is my method for operating this stove, and I think if you haven't tried it, try it, because using the Blaze King method, following the instructions, it's just too much smoke. I wish they would figure out a way to minimize that, and I think this method of startup and reloading, where you're starting up with the air control on a very closed position, may be the answer. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I hope it looks great in 4K. I shot this on the Panasonic GH4 in 4K with the Panasonic, or the Lumix 12 to 35 version 1 lens. This camera is a really nice camera. Anyway, thanks.